Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight, we are on episode 286. And as you may have noticed, Ben's not able to join us here tonight. He is out doing some adventuring of his own, so best of luck to him, and hopefully he comes back with some great stories. And tonight, we're going to be chatting about MREs. So I've had this question a couple times in the past now, and it was one of those things that I am doing some reels on. I purchased a whole bunch of MREs and I was going to do a couple 1-minute videos and stuff on them, but you know what? I'm not going to lie, I'm a little slack at getting those videos out. Once motorcycle season's over and I'm not working every weekend, I'll have a little bit of time, and I promise I will get them out. So tonight, I figured that I would answer the question verbally for our podcast listeners, because frankly, that's where the question came from. So we got Steve joining us there tonight, the Drifting Spore. How's it going tonight, Steve? If you feel free, or I should say, feel free to weigh in on anything here. I'm sure you must have tried a couple of these yourself. So let's jump right into it. I don't expect tonight to be a super long episode. That's kind of why it was good to do solo, because I think we could probably beat it to death if we don't watch it. So starting off, there are a couple different MREs, and if you see me looking over here, I'm looking at my notes. There's a couple different types of MREs you can get. Not all MREs are born equal, so to speak. Hey, Danny, thanks for joining us. Red Sand Adventures there. Red Sand Adventures. Can't string a sentence together, saved my life tonight. So yeah, there is a couple different MREs. They're not all born or created equal. And for anybody that's wondering, an MRE is a meal ready to eat, or meal ready to eat, whatever you want to say. But in any case, it's basically those dehydrated food packs you see in any of the backpacking stores and stuff like that. That's the civilian kind. There's also a military surplus kind, which you're going to pay significantly more money for, and you're most likely going to have to pick it up from like an Army Navy surplus or buy them online. There is some debate if the surplus ones are even surplus or if they're knockoffs. I'm going to be honest with you. I did have an opportunity to try both a real military MRE as well as a military surplus MRE. And if they're the same or not, I'm not going to make speculation, but the stuff that comes in the packs and how they function and their taste and stuff like that, I'm not going to lie, they were pretty much identical. A little newer updated packaging on the ones you'd buy online. The ones from the military probably sat in a shelf for at least 5-10 years before anyone got to eat them. But that's a whole other topic. But if you're wondering, are they the same? As far as I can tell, at least they taste the same, and the stuff that comes in them is generally pretty familiar. Or similar, sorry. Let's see. Big box of rations under the bunk of the camp. Most of them are edible. Some are actually good. And Danny, I have some MRE meals I plan on doing a video or two on soon. Stay tuned. So if anybody wants a follow-up on this, check out Danny's channel there, Red Sand Adventures. Apparently he's going to do a couple of videos on them as well. And this is one of those things, folks. It's good. This is my opinion, based on my experience, what I've purchased, what I've tried, and just a little bit of testing I've done with it. So, military MREs. Let's start there, because that's kind of where the whole concept came from. Generally, when the militia or, reserves, rag force, military in general are going out, they needed something that they could throw in their packs. It was high in calories and fairly simple to make when they're out there doing their training, maybe live field, I don't know. I know mostly they were used in training when I was familiar with them. They generally cost a lot more if you're going to pick them up either from a surplus store or from online. Anything that's like a military surplus, a lot of times you're going to pay a premium on it. In this instance, it tends to be quite a bit. But the good thing about these MREs, they usually have a longer shelf life than the civilian side ones. They also come with a little bit more in them. Now, where most of the civilian side ones, you basically just get an entree, like a single meal. The military MREs, they generally have an entree, a dessert, a snack, some beverage powders, usually like an electrolyte juice drink, some coffee, sugars, creamers. And then they usually come with an accessory pack, which could be like your fork, knife, like one of those long spoons. And those who know. Maybe some chiclets, gum. That used to be a big thing in them. A pack of matches so you can boil water and things like that. Now, in the instance of a military MRE, there's two types of those you can get. Generally, the field ones that I've seen, they come with matches. They want you to, make your own fire, boil up some water. But keep in mind, this was back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and I'm like the auto heater packs, which we're going to talk about here in a second. They were still a fairly new concept and really expensive. I have not had any military MREs since then. So maybe somebody can weigh in on there if they had something that was a little bit more recent and confirm or deny that. But anyway, the experience I had came with matches. Now, with most of these, they are an add water kind, or sorry, let me back up. With the military ones, and a lot of times they are not an add water thing. You take the pouch and boil it in some water. Once again, the experience I had. The online ones that I have seen do come with the heater pack. And when I say heater pack, it's literally a pack that you kind of crack open. You know those like little heating packs you can get for sore muscles and stuff like that? It's just a really aggressive version of that. You snap it open, you put it in a bag, then you take your entree and your meal stuff and you put it in alongside of it and you seal the bag and you set it aside for however long it happens to be for that meal. And that will heat it, which to me, for a military ration, makes total sense. You're not making a fire, drawing attention to yourself, the smell of smoke. So maybe all the new ones are like that through the military. Once again, I am not sure. Now, non-heater pack ones, generally there's going to be two ways of cooking those. You boil a pot of water, you set the package in the boiling pot of water, or you take it off and you set it in the hot water, whatever, and it reheats it that way. Or you can get some of them, depending on what the meal is. Breakfasts usually is what I've seen. When you got oatmeal and stuff like that, you just boil the water up, add it to the package. Stir, set aside, let hydrate, and eat it that way. But yeah, the military ones, they generally cost more money. They got a little bit more in them. Quality-wise, all MREs that I have eaten and tried, they're not going to be as good as fresh cooked. Don't, if anybody ever says, oh, I like this better than the real, I'd find it hard to believe. I mean, there's a lot of good ones, don't misunderstand, but I would never trade like a MRE Salisbury steak for a homemade one, if that makes any kind of sense. The texture in most of them is going to be either hard, especially when it comes to the bread packets and stuff like that. You used to get like a biscuit in them that you could literally use as mortar bricks. And then like in the instance of the Salisbury steak and I'm thinking like the beef stroganoff and things like that, the meat tends to be either one of two, hard and chewy or mushy and squishy. But once again, it is in there. They generally taste okay, if long as you don't mind the texture. I personally like that electrolyte drink that they supply with it. It's basically like it's like Kool-Aid without the sugar. You know what I mean? But it's packed full of electrolytes, usually a little high in sodium. Calorie-wise, these things tend to be very high too. Generally about 1,200 to 2,000 calories per MRE. So yeah, if you want to go military, that's my info on military. Now on a civilian side MRE, they are a couple different options with that as well. Generally, you're going to get the ones where you add water. So you're going to boil up, usually it's a cup to 2 cups of water, you boil it up, you put it in the pack, you stir, they do not provide utensils, you stir it, seal it, set it aside anywhere between like 10 to 12 minutes. Generally, the civilian sides, they are just an entree. You don't get all the nice extras. It's just a pack, usually a freeze-dried pack of some sort. But on the flip side, they tend to be significantly cheaper than the military MREs, as well as it's generally a 2-person serving per one. So if you take one of those, and I mean, use this lightly, depending on how big you are. Like, I can sit down and eat one full pack. Not going to lie to you. But I could space it out over 2 meals. And Melissa and I have, in all the ones that I tested, we split them, and they were quite good, honestly. The only thing with the civilian side ones that I found, they all kind of turned to a paste. Once again, it's a texture thing, and I found all of them were kind of sweet. Things that shouldn't be sweet had a sweet hint to them, and I don't know what that's all about. I also found they didn't rehydrate as well as I would have liked them to. In a lot of the instances where I used them, I found myself adding the water, stirring, setting aside like they say, and when I come back to it, it's not as warm as I want it, and it hasn't rehydrated as much as I want it. So I would end up boiling a little more water, adding a touch more water, stirring it up, and then setting the pack in the boiling water, or in the hot water to kind of keep some of that heat and let it cook or expand the stuff inside, because you get this weird texture of mush and crunchy. Some of the stuff that just wouldn't rehydrate, and yeah, I can hear some of you saying, oh, you just didn't stir it good enough. Trust me, folks, I stirred the heck out of these things. Didn't matter, or didn't seem to matter what I did. There was always like that one little bite that went completely unrehydrated. And it was kind of a running gag in all the different ones I bought. And we tried numerous ones from different stores, different brand names, different price points, different types of food. We actually did a pretty thorough testing in them. And like I said, straight across them, they all had that one thing in common. They were mushy and generally sweet. And I don't know what that sweet is all about. So there's the information on the MREs. Are they worth it? It depends, honestly. Like military MREs, you're going to get a pack of 12 for around $300 for half decent ones. That's pretty costly. The civilian ones, the individual pouch ones that you get from places like Mech, any of the backpacking stores, even like big box marts and things like that, they're usually between $15 and $30. So significantly cheaper. Well, not significantly, honestly, because if you're getting 12 for $300, that's, it's a little under $30 a piece anyway. So cost-wise, just depends what you want to go. It's way easier to go get the civilian side ones. You can just run, like I said, to any of those stores I listed, or buy them online in surplus and actually in bulk, and get a significant savings on them. So the convenience-wise, they're not bad. I keep a couple around. It's definitely not something I'm going to give up my meals in the woods for. I might keep one at the bottom of my bag in the event that, something happened and I ended up staying longer than I expected. That way I have a meal that I could potentially stretch out over 2 more days. But I don't think I would, daily it for my meals. The only exception for this might be if you were doing long hikes, like Appalachian Trail hikers and things like that. I could see where they're going to take it just for the weight savings, because it is free dries. You're not getting a whole lot of weight to it. But almost I don't want to say the inconvenience of building the fire and boiling the water and stuff, because if I go out in the woods, I'm doing it anyway. I don't know. If I'm going through all of that, to me, I'd rather just make real food. Ben and I have cooked steaks directly on the first night that we went out there on the coals, and there is no comparison to that. Eggs, they'll generally keep for the next morning. You make nice scrambled eggs in a pop bottle. Ben has done that and shown me, and it's worked amazingly. You can get things like Ready Crisp bacon, which is going to last pretty good. You can cook that. There's just a lot of good things you can take that don't take a lot of weight, and you're not going to have the drawbacks to the MREs. And I'm not knocking on them. Some people are going to love them for what they are. Just my opinions. The other thing on MREs is you can kind of make your own. And as long as you're willing to put the time and effort in, you can make some real good stuff. And the first one up, we've talked about this in past episodes, is just dehydrating your own stuff. Ben talked about dehydrating some chili. I've seen it done with pasta sauces and pastas. And yeah, actually you cook the pasta and then re-dehydrate it. It actually changed the way it rehydrates. If people are wondering, why don't you just cook the actual pasta? Well, you can do that, but then you got to boil it and actually cook it. As where if you cook it and then dehydrate it, it reconstitutes different. It doesn't take as long, at least in my example. But yeah, you can make some really nice stuff at home. Let's see what Steve's saying. I saw a video Mark did where he was trying Mr. Honey's Kitchen MREs. They freeze dry home cooked meals. You add boiling water and shake every 5 minutes for 15 to 20 minutes. They look pretty good, man. Yeah, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with these things. It's just what you pay to what you got to do. And for me, what I'm saving, I just take real food. I mean, they're a niche. They do fill a need. I do have a couple. Like I said, I'm going to keep a couple in my backpack. But it's not going to be my main draw. Me, I'd probably go with the dehydrated stuff like we're talking about now. If you can dehydrate some chili, and Ben made an awesome dehydrated chili, and it didn't take a whole lot of weight, and you just added the water, and it came back to actual real chili, and it was absolutely delicious. Excuse me. I would probably go with something like that, or some spaghetti sauce, and dehydrate the spaghetti and reconstitute that back there for a couple reasons. One, I find it reconstitutes better. It comes back to a more natural food texture and flavoring. Two, you can adjust the flavor to what you want. If you happen to like a specific type of spaghetti sauce, in this case, you can make that to however you want and re-dehydrate it, or sorry, not re-dehydrate it, actually dehydrate it, and pack it in that way. I've seen potatoes, and some people are going to say, why don't you just use the packaged potatoes? We're getting to that. But I have seen people do real mashed potatoes, put them on their dehydrator on like the fruit walnut pan, dehydrate them, crunch them up into a powder, and make their own powdered potatoes, and they actually come back better than the powdered ones. They taste amazing. I've seen veggies done. Soup mixes are a big thing to throw in there, and these are all real low-cost items that you can make at home with the purchase of generally a $100 dehydrator. The downside: it does take the time, effort, and it does cost a little energy. And when I say energy, I mean actual power in your house. Dehydrating can take anywhere from 4 to 20 hours, depending on what you're dehydrating and how many of it is, or how much of it there is. It's a time investment. It's generally not worth doing an individual portion. I would recommend, if you're going to do dehydrating, that you do like sets of things. So you'd make 3 or 4 meals out of it, or you're making a big batch because you're going to be taking it with other people. To do individual servings like just on their own on the dehydrator, once again, the time needed to invest into it, to me, outweighs what you get. I would probably take fresh in that instance. But longevity. How long you can keep it in your pack before it goes bad. Once again, the military MREs and the civilian MREs, those things are good for years. The home dehydrated stuff, a couple days, depending on what you're making there, maybe up to a month, depending on some of the stuff, if you're carrying it in your backpack, and you really got to watch what you're doing there. And I suggest you all do your research on that. Now, what I tend to do with a lot of my dehydrated stuff is I make it and then I vacuum seal it. And then I'll either throw it in the fridge or freezer or whatever, and then I am still keeping it again, and I'll pull them from there. I think I get a little bit more time out of that. At least in my head I do. But yeah, definitely look at the instructions on most dehydrators. They're going to tell you how to store this stuff and how much longer it's going to last for you. But generally, you're still going to get a good time out of it. Not a good time, meaning you're going to get a fair amount of time. Now, fresh, there's where you're really getting into, you're eating it within the day or so. I mean, and I'm not talking like the can of beans you throw in your backpack, because that's literally a can of beans. You use can opener, you open it, it's going to last as long as it's going to last in your cupboard, but that's a lot of weight to take along, and we're talking about meals that you can take in that are hopefully lighter and fresher. Well, maybe not necessarily fresher. In the instance of fresh, it would be. Like I said, for the first day, now that Ben has shown me the light, I tend to take something meat related for that supper. I'll take it out of the freezer, I'll roll it up in newspaper or something like that, and then a cloth around it, put it in my backpack. Generally, by the time I get to where I'm going, set up my camp, get the hammock or the tent or whatever done, a little fire going, cup of coffee on, or a drink of some sort. Once I get to that steak or piece of meat, whatever it is, it's generally just about defrosted. So it works out really well. And I'm not saying put it in there naked, folks. Put it in a Ziploc bag or something. I guess I should clarify that. Then wrap it in newspaper and then put a cloth around it. The Ziploc bag will catch any of the juices and stuff like that. The newspaper or flyers is going to create a thermal layer. It's going to hold that cold in a little longer. And then the cloth around it, that'll just catch anything else, potentially like moisture that seeps through. And I'm not talking like the juices of the meat, but literally like the condensation that's going to be forming on the outside of it. It seeps through the newspaper. It has something to catch it. That's just my way of doing it. I mean, for years I used to take tea in the woods in a mason jar wrapped in newspaper and a cloth around it, and 12 hours later it would still be hot. So it does work thermal related. So yeah, that's generally what I do for the first night. Next night might be eggs. I generally won't go more than a day with that, but Ben would have more information on that, and I hope he weighs in sometime later on. Let's see. I'm a big fan of bottled stuff. I had a bottle of porridge soup that my mother-in-law made. She canned the soup in a mason jar. I had it in the woods a while back. It was the best thing I ever had. And yeah, once again, you can get into canning meat, and it's really good too. And that'll last pretty good as well. Different topic, different night. But yeah, fresh is generally how I go if I'm going with a short distance, trying to get myself back on track here, or a short duration. If I'm going for a longer duration, then I look into dehydrate and taking my own stuff. I like taking rice. I generally don't take minute rice, though lots of people do. I just find it, I don't care for minute rice out in the woods. Don't know why. I take real rice, I boil it up, 2 parts water to 1 part rice. You just boil it. I make little flavor packets of my own. Might be a little bit of beef stock or chicken stock, like the cube bouillons. Throw in some dehydrated chives, some garlic, stuff like that, and you just make your ready rice pack. Lots of starches and stuff in that. Lots of carbs. You're going to get a good energy boost from it. It keeps fairly well. Easy to make. You're just boiling it on the fire anyway, pretty easy to portion, and that's my long-term go-to. I do use like the dehydrated potatoes and stuff like that in the packages, and while we're on that topic, let's talk a minute. If you want something that's gonna last, it cooks almost the same as an MRE, go to the dollar store and get some of the little package deals, like I'm thinking like the little package pastas, and I should have grabbed some, but we did an episode on this not long ago either where we talked about them. Just go back and check those out. We labeled off a few, but I'm thinking like the packaged pastas, the packaged potatoes. You can get a lot of good stuff on those, and literally you're just going to boil it in a pot. Add some water, boil it up, bam, instant meal. It's already going to last for many a months in its package. It's no bigger than generally the civilian-sized MREs. It's going to feed just as many people. And that's what I default to, in all honesty, if I want to do MREs. I just go to the dollar store, spend about $6 and get a week's worth of food. Mix that with a little bit of fresh for my first couple days, a handful of rice in a package with my package flavors, and I'm good to go. That's generally how I do my food and MRE stuff like that. I don't buy into the big ones. I have... and I have no problems with them other than what I mentioned, like I said, and most of that's personal preference, and I understand that. So to those who don't have the time to invest into dehydrating and stuff like that, yeah, MREs are going to be worth it. For those that want to invest into a little bit more customization, grab a dehydrator. Expensive first purchase. It's going to be about $100 for a low grade one, up to $500 for a good one. The $100 one's going to make you lots of food too, folks. I don't think you have to jump right to the top until you try it a little bit. You can also use your own oven for a lot of dehydrating things, but once again, now you're generating a lot of heat, using a lot of power. It's generally a long time. If you want to get into dehydrating, I think you'll like it more than MREs. If you're just looking for something quick, you don't want to invest the time and effort into it, and you're worrying about spoilage and cooking in the woods, MREs are definitely worth it, but you're going to pay for them. And you are paying for that convenience. If you're weighing the option between civilian and military surplus, my personal preference, if you can shell out the $300 to buy 12 at once, I like the military ones a little better because it gives you some more options, and I find the packages just a little... I find more variety. Let's just leave it at that. Though the packaging itself is more bulky. But once again, there's more stuff in it. I like the heater pack ones for the convenience of it, but it does create a little extra garbage and stuff that you're going to lug back out. So I tend not to get them, even though I like them. I get the add water ones if I can have a choice. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on that here tonight. I know it's only been 22 minutes. I was trying to keep it short. We jumped down a few rabbit holes like normal. Hopefully I can get Ben back on here and maybe revisit this in a little while if anybody has more questions on it. Danny is going to be doing some videos on there, as he said, so I encourage everybody to jump on his channel and check it out. And like I said, once motorcycle season's done and I'm not teaching on the weekends, I do plan on releasing my episodes off the MREs that I've tried as well. And they're not going to be full-length videos, folks. Mine are going to be reels. I was starting a series of like 1-minute reviews, and the MREs were first on the list, and hopefully I can get those all done up and see what you folks think about them. The ones I have can't be bought. Ooh, Danny's got some special stuff there, so definitely check out his channel there, Red Sand Adventures, one more time. And when he does his reviews there, maybe that'll give you a little bit more insight too. Also, folks, as always, if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us on any of our social medias. Generally, if you type in Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures into any of your search engines, you're going to get a hold of us somehow. You can look at our website, atlanticbushcraft.ca, and there is a contact us page in there. Feel free to go for it. But the easiest way is generally look us up on Facebook or YouTube. Throw a comment in there. We'll get to it right away. If you do contact us through the messaging system on the website, sometimes it goes to spam. Yes, we'll eventually get to it. Unfortunately, it might be a few weeks, and I do apologize for that. I do periodically go through and check the spam mail just to check that there's, nothing there important, but keep in mind where we advertise the email address, it is flooded with a bunch of crap that just is nonsensical. Generally, people wondering if they want us to advertise their podcast, which is completely spam bots, or just spam in general. So anyway, folks, let's see. Jacob DeFord, thanks, man, just getting here, but have a good night. Well, thanks for jumping on, Jacob. It was kind of a shorter episode anyway, but it's definitely a good one to maybe listen to on a drive or something like that if you have any questions or thoughts on MREs. So until next week, folks, which I do believe we have a topic for next week. I got to talk to Ben, but we did have a request on the YouTube channel about recipes we use in the woods. So unless something changes or something comes up that we need to talk about a little bit more urgently, next week join Ben and I where we will be talking about some of the recipes we have used in the woods. Until then, folks, have a good night.